The North American International Auto Show kicked off in Detroit. It was originally supposed to be held in January, but the event was delayed due to the aftermath of Big One. The topic of the recent motor show is future cars represented by autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles. Not only automobile companies but also IT companies and startups participated and introduced various new technologies such as electric vehicles, self-driving cars, and cars made with 3D printers. Several hydrogen cars had appeared before that, but this time they have completely disappeared. BMW, Benz, Toyota, and Nissan, which took a step forward in the development of hydrogen cars along with Unsung Motors, all came out with electric vehicles instead of hydrogen cars. No matter what happens in the future, it is because hydrogen cars cannot keep up with the advancement of electric vehicle technology for now. Several companies have unveiled their new cars, but the one that drew the most attention is the S60. At this motor show, S60 unveiled its first new electric car. The AD3 in the form of a sports sedan, and the AD4 in the city SUV. Both are futuristic designs with aerodynamics in mind. People couldn't help but admire the completely different design from before. The reason why the design suddenly changed compared to the normal and easy AD1 and AD2 is because a new car designer joined. Cesar Lenchester, who oversaw Audi's design and made numerous hits, moved to Carlos, saying he wanted to do something challenging and fun. New wine must be put in new bottles. AD3 and AD4 are not the cars that follow the legacy of Chrysler, but are completely new cars that will change the paradigm of automobiles. As such, we need to present a completely different design than before. Inevitably, existing car companies have to carry on their traditions and identities, so there are inevitably limitations in design. But Carlos was able to free himself from such restrictions. The result is an entirely new design. The most characteristic part of the exterior is the disappearance of the side mirrors. Instead, cameras and displays have been replaced. The design alone was enough to attract attention, but surprisingly, it has a range of over 1,000 kilometers. In addition, even though the battery capacity has increased, it also introduced a fast charging technology that can charge about 40% in 15 minutes and 80% in 30 minutes. It is no exaggeration to say that this is enough to compensate for the shortcomings of electric vehicles. Of course, it is equipped with more advanced autonomous driving technology using data accumulated from AD1 and AD2 driving. Carlos Ryan said at the presentation, "Everything is ready. S60 will go beyond autonomous driving and usher in the era of completely driverless vehicles. The future is now." The release of AD3 and AD4 was a huge topic of discussion. However, it was the ADX, a concept car, that received more attention. The ADX is a 5-seater pickup truck and it is not small but full-size. Pickup trucks are like a soul car for Americans, ranking as the best-selling car in the United States every year. Although it is a market with huge potential, the reason electric vehicles have not been introduced is because of their mileage. In particular, full-size pickup trucks are like hippos that eat oil because of their size and weight. It is difficult to drive 200 kilometers without using existing batteries. However, the ADX equipped with OTK battery was able to travel up to 500 kilometers. Ryan said that the ADX is a concept car and there is no official release date, but public and media interest was explosive. A full-size, four-wheel drive electric pickup truck. Design is boring. If you drive 300 miles, you can run long distances. That's enough to eat in the city center. When it is released, I will definitely buy it. A real man is a full-size pickup truck. The reaction was so hot that the Motor Show article was covered with all talk about S60. S60 electric car release. Will the auto industry change? The main character of this North American Motor Show is S60, no matter what anyone says. There was no room for other cars in the 3 new cars they brought. When other companies look to mass-produce autonomous vehicles, S60 has declared that it will usher in an era of driverless cars. Syncopation. The value of the S60 is already higher than that of Toyota, GM, Nikola, and Ford combined. In addition, Facit entered the car infotainment market by utilizing its know-how accumulated in the porn industry, and M-Pizza is already actively introducing S60 autonomous driving technology for delivery. In the next year or two, it will become natural for driverless cars to drive on the road, and driving will remain a hobby for some. Carlos is at the forefront of all these changes. Until now, the car king was Henry Ford. However, in the 21st century, It may be necessary to hand over the throne to Kang Jin-ho. The North American International Motor Show ended successfully, and various articles poured in. I was playing a game with Taekyu on my way to work, and Senior Ki-hong rushed up to the CEO's office. "Okay, something has happened, sir." I stopped the game. "What's going on?" "No, don't be surprised and listen." "I won't be surprised, tell me." He seems to have been shocked by what he heard. Did the Fed even raise rates by 100 basis points last night? Or, did the exchange rate break through the 2001 mark? Or did the oil price rise above $200 per barrel? It is not. Then what? Senior Ki-hong said in a loud voice. The president has been selected as a strong candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize. There was silence for a moment and Taekyu and I looked at each other's faces. What was it? What a big deal, it's no big deal. Senior Ki-hong had a bewildered expression on his face. Oh no, isn't it surprising? It's a Nobel Prize nominee. A Nobel Prize, not any other award. The Nobel Prize, as we all know, is awarded by the foundation established by Alfred Nobel, who developed dynamite, and is the most famous and credible award in the world. I'm not alone, am I a co-candidate? That's right. I accepted the tablet that Senior Ki-hong had offered me. I, President Ronald Stamper and Professor Kiran Mohan were selected as co-candidates. The reason is, of course, that by preparing for Big One in advance, millions of lives have been saved. Taekyu patted my shoulder and said, "Isn't it most likely that he will receive this year anyway?" Senior Ki-hong quickly bowed his back. "Congratulations, President. The staff will support you with one heart." Actually, I expected it, but it didn't really come true. I am the Nobel Prize. I don't think I won a few awards when I was in school. Aren't you going to give me a prize? It won't be long. I looked it up, it's over 1 billion. Are you giving this per person or should it be divided by a third? I can do rock, paper, scissors and drive it to one person. It's genius. I got a call from the White House. Ronald burst out laughing at what was so good. Haha. It's a Nobel Peace Prize. At that time what you said to me as a joke became a reality. Yes. Did I say that? Didn't you persuade me to prepare for the big one and say that I'll win the Nobel Peace Prize later? Oh yes. It was. It was so urgent that he seemed to have said everything. It is still only a nomination, but the award has not been confirmed. But Ronald is drinking cold kimchi soup. Shouldn't we wait until the winners are announced? Ha! What does the award matter? If you don't give it, you don't get it. I don't have any greed at all. Ahaha. I like it so much for that. If they don't give it to them, there is an atmosphere of trade retaliation against Norway. Already, Norway has a history of being beaten by China once for giving Liu Xiaobo the Nobel Peace Prize. If even the United States does that, won't they be beaten for not holding an awards ceremony in the future? Anyway, there are no competitors this year, so we have the highest chance of winning. Once I've been nominated, I'll give it to you whenever possible. Korea has fewer Nobel Prize winners compared to its economic size. So far, it has been awarded only once. Former President Kim Dae-jung was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. When news broke that a Korean could be awarded another Nobel Peace Prize, people were in a welcoming mood. 5. Will there be a second Korean Nobel Prize winner? Envy. A lot of money, a Nobel Prize. What can the guy who is to do? I worked so hard to save people, but it's not right to give. By the way, shouldn't Jin-ho Kang receive the Economics Prize rather than the Peace Prize? If you're going to give me a Nobel Prize in economics for making a lot of money, Warren Boat should get it first. The Nobel Prize in Economics is not strictly a Nobel Prize. The recipient of the award is not the Nobel Foundation, but the Swedish Central Bank. By the way, it's a peace prize again. The neighboring country, Japan, does well in science and literature, but is there anything that Korea can receive other than the Peace Prize? It's good to get anything. However, not everyone welcomed the news. There were people who hated me as much as there were likes and dislikes for me. It was immediately raised by conservative groups. Kang Jin-ho, a red-haired gangster, is the Nobel Prize winner. Are you rewarding him for what he's done? This is nonsense. It must be stopped. How dare you dare to put a spoon on President Ronald's achievements? What kind of prize is the speculator who only reveals money he can't make money? Let's unite our patriotic conservatives. Let's take this opportunity to abolish the Nobel Prize altogether. President Park Si-hyung, I love you. Read more at wuxiax.com. Conservative groups said they would gather in front of Daehaemun Gate on the weekend to protest the release of President Park Si-hyung and protest against the Nobel Prize after Kang Jin-ho. For this purpose, a grand name of the National Action Committee to stop Kang Jin-ho from winning the Nobel Prize was created. The group agreed to send a letter a day to the Nobel Committee while receiving signatures. We handed out stationery and envelopes to members, and raised money to cover international postage expenses. Some lawmakers from the Liberal People's Party also jumped on board and raised their voices saying, Jin-ho Kang should not receive the Nobel Prize, and even if he does, he should return it. Representative Lee Jong-hae said in a strong tone. She said, it was all thanks to President Ronald's decision that prevented the Big One disaster. It is absurd that Koreans are jointly awarded the prize for the disaster that happened in the United States. This not only goes against international equity, but also threatens to undermine the ROK-US alliance. We need to make a statement against it at the National Assembly level. The public reaction was absurd. I'm a conservative too, but who the hell chose these bastards? Sorry. As a resident of the constituency, I apologize on behalf of you. I'm embarrassed and sold out, so I'm moving right away. I searched for a constituency and found it to be our neighborhood TTO. MW don't go out and vote that day. Other countries are outraged because they can't receive the Nobel Prize, but even if they give it, the Korean class is outrageous. It is said that letters are pouring out like bombs to the Nobel Committee not to give the Nobel Peace Prize to Kang Jin-ho. By the way, what are you thinking about sending it in Korean? Can they read it? Do you have a head or not? Just like Liu Xiaobo let Kang Jin-ho be enslaved. So I can't get it? Who is the bastard who wrote to the UN to abolish the Nobel Prize? Why are you sending it to the UN? Leave it alone. Do you want to disgrace the country? You said while looking at the articles and comments coming up. Suddenly, I remember that Your Excellency worked to cancel former President Kim Dae-jung's Nobel Peace Prize. In the process of uncovering Park Si-hyung's corruption, the allegation that he had been involved in the cancellation of the Nobel Prize turned out to be true. Even conservative groups and the National Intelligence Service were mobilized here. No matter how different their political stances are, would it make sense to mobilize even state agencies to ask for the Nobel Prizes that have already been won to be cancelled? At the time, the jury members of the Nobel Committee were astonished that he had seen a country lobbying for a Nobel Prize, but had never seen a country lobbying for the Nobel Prize to be revoked. Even so, I did everything I could in tears to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, what would the Nobel Foundation award a prize for? And awards that have already been given cannot be cancelled. In the end, it was just a foolish thing to do with the public tax. Professor Mohan was calm, refusing to interview the press, but Ronald was completely excited. Everywhere he went, his supporters shouted, "Nobel," and the media cameras caught him smiling each time. Another good news flew in. Professor Haemin Kim has been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. The Nobel Peace Prize is controversial every year because the concept of peace itself is subjective and ambiguous. However, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry must have achievements that can be recognized by both academia and the public. Korea earns a living from various high-tech products such as semiconductors, displays, and smartphones, but has not produced a single science award winner. No, it wasn't that much, and the candidates didn't get it right. But this time, Professor Haemin Kim has finally been named as a strong candidate. 5. Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Is there finally a science award winner? Isn't it Jin-ho Kang who applied for Professor Haemin Kim anyway? You are now the director of the OTK Research Center. If both of them win the Nobel Prize this time, will OTK company produce 2 winners? It's Long Otaku Company. Proud to be a Korean company. Isn't that an American company? What does it matter? It doesn't matter that Koreans ride. I am very excited to see what kind of Jensei will be placed by Representative Lee Jong-hae. Several members of the Liberal People's Party provoked a match over my being mentioned as a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize, but they kept their mouths shut against Professor Haemin Kim. The new political party, on the other hand, welcomed it with comments. The new political party wishes Professor Haemin Kim to receive the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. This is an achievement that will go down in the history of science in Korea and a feat that proves the excellence of basic science in Korea. The party leader, floor leader, and middle-level lawmakers stormed into the research center without contact, saying they would meet Professor Kim Ho-min. Professor Haemin Kim, who unexpectedly welcomed them, took a picture together without knowing English. and the picture covered the news and newspapers. It didn't end here. The first time lawmakers visited Hankook University as a group and the Seosong SB plant, which produces OTK batteries, and some lawmakers competed for the Act on Support and Investment for the Promotion of Basic Science, also known as the Kim Ho-min Act. It was not made by collecting the opinions of the people concerned, and there is no way that a bill that was made in haste by mixing it up here and there is not the right content. The problem is that there are many doctors and lawyers among members of the National Assembly, but there are no scientists. The scientific community was shocked. In the meantime, he pretended not to know when he was asking for support, but now he is trying to jump on the issue by attaching Professor Ho-min Kim's name to a law that doesn't even sound like a word. Taekyu looked at the article and said, "No, what did Ji-dul do to put a spoon on someone else's table? This is why I hate politicians. So I sent back all the politicians who came to shake hands and take pictures." Domestic media and foreign media flocked to OTK company. It's rare for a company to have two Nobel Prize winners at the same time. Interview requests poured in, but both me and Professor Ho-min Kim declined. Team leader Jong Ki-hong just issued an official press release. The staff were also excited. Should I give a bonus if I win the prize? Another place I was excited about was Korea University. The reason is, of course, that both me and Professor Ho-min Kim are from Korea University. It is not easy to produce two Nobel laureates from the same university. Which organization is best suited to addressing various issues? It is an online betting site, not a group of experts or a research institute. Here you can bet on all kinds of topics, as well as horse racing and bicycle racing, weather, sports, elections, voting results, etc. This includes who will be awarded the Nobel Prize. In fact, an expert's opinion is the result of a sober judgment, but at the same time, external factors such as the institution to which the person belongs, the organization he supports, and the influence of the government also play a big role. But with anonymous betting sites, you don't have to worry about these things. Taeyong nodded his head and said, "Everyone lies. But no one lies with their money." According to a betting site, it was almost certain that President Ronald and Professor Mohun shared the Nobel Peace Prize, and Professor Ho-min Kim had a 50% chance of winning. I headed to the OTK lab with Taekyu. When we arrived nearby, the first thing we noticed was the banners hanging all over the place. Some bets are made by local politicians and some are bets by ordinary citizens. Did this country not get a Nobel Prize and have any regrets? Thanks to the development of OTK batteries, Professor Ho-min Kim sat on a cushion of money. He is probably the richest professor in Korea. I was curious to see how friendly he was with the money he had earned so far, but seeing him after a long time, there is no such thing as a beggar. His hair was messy and his clothes were so dirty that he didn't know when they were washed. My face was glistening with dog oil because I didn't wash my face. This is also true of other researchers. Everyone was sobbing as if they hadn't slept properly. I bought some pizza. Everyone eat it. I handed over a dozen boxes of pizzas that I had brought in the car, and the researchers ate them like zombies. I told Professor Ho-min Kim, "I take a little break." "When you're done taking a break, when do you study and when do you experiment?" Professor Ho-min Kim collaborated with Seosong SB Research Center to continuously improve the performance of OTK batteries while researching wireless charging technology. Wireless charging has been commercialized in smartphones and other electronic devices, but electric vehicles are still in the experimental stage. Wireless charging with magnetic induction is possible when the car is put in the parking lot, but the problem is that it does not come out as fast as wired charging. In order to use it in practice, it is necessary to increase the efficiency by at least 90% compared to wired charging. Now, a person has to directly plug the cord into the charging port. I plan to change this to a wireless charging method that automatically charges when the car is placed in the parking lot. The fully charged car automatically starts and moves to the normal parking area. As the car charges itself when not in use, there is no need to worry about charging. It may seem like a distant future when you hear such a story, but it can be implemented without difficulty even with the current technology. Efficiency is just an issue. The key is, after all, the battery. OTK batteries are being produced first as small batteries at the Seosong SB plant, and large-sized batteries for automobiles have started production at the TS Company plant in the US. Seosong Electronics has actively installed OTK batteries in new smartphones and laptops. In a situation where the performance of electronic products has been leveled up, the long usage time is a sufficient marketing point. Other companies such as NPL and MS have also received requests for battery supply, but it is difficult to supply them to Samsung Electronics with the current production volume. The situation was similar for large-sized automobile batteries. Originally, when TS Company was built, if production was stable, it was going to supply batteries to other automakers like Nikola's Gigaplant. But things have changed a bit since then. OTK batteries have been developed, and the electric vehicle plant is continuing to expand. We don't know if sales plummet and will probably run out of supplies. Battery and electric vehicle makers started developing their own technologies, but it was difficult to keep up with the performance of OTK batteries no matter how much they improved the performance of the existing NCM batteries. We sat in Professor Haman Kim's lab. Still messy. As if he slept intermittently, there was a folding bed spread out on one side. Professor Haman Kim gave me a coffee mix and I took it and drank it. I hope to win the Nobel Prize soon. Professor Haman Kim smiled mischievously. What is the Nobel Prize? There are many people who have done more great things than me. There is also the Stafford Bear team which has made research achievements in molecular chemistry this time. There is also Malcolm Gladwell who developed the cryo-electron microscope. Isn't that still not as good as developing a new material to replace cobalt? The price of cobalt, which had soared, continued to plummet after the development of OTK batteries, and now it has fallen more than 70% from its peak. Hedge funds, which were speculating due to the cobalt price crash, suffered huge losses, and the Congolese rebels who were occupying the cobalt mines cut off their funds, weakening their power and ending a civil war. So, some joked about whether we should give the Peace Prize rather than the Chemistry Prize. I said confidently, obviously the professor will ride. Taeyong also nodded his head. Of course. For sure. Professor Haman Kim waved his hand. Don't say things like that. If I can't ride like this, I'm sold out and I can't even lift my head. The reason I'm so sure is because I've seen the foreknowledge, but I can't tell you that directly. Professor Haman Kim changed the topic. By the way, looking at this motor show, other companies' technological prowess wasn't that great. I was a little surprised too. Evair demonstrated near-complete autonomous driving technology, and Ford and GM also came out with new electric vehicles with significantly improved mileage and charging speed. Although the methods are different, the ultimate goal is the same. It is the integration of means of transportation using driverless vehicles. Keras is also preparing to expand into ride-sharing and ride-sharing. In electric vehicles you will face Nikola and BID, and in ride-sharing Evair, Dadachushing and Crab are competitors. Whoever wins this competition will take the supremacy of the automobile industry in the 21st century. Taekyu asked. But why are there so few Nobel Prize winners in science in Korea? Because we didn't properly invest and support. Whatever you invest in, it pays off. Because money doesn't lie. Unlike practical science that can be used right away, basic science takes a long time to grow and bloom. For this reason, it is true that both the government and corporations have neglected basic science. Professor Haman Kim said. So, I'm going to use the money I earned this time to invest in basic science. It is not that there are no proper scientists in Korea. There is just no proper support system. Taejayu said. But if you apply for such a thing, don't you omit all of the above? Professor Haman Kim scratched his head. I can't say no. It is a spectacle to see the behavior of professors embezzling research funds. They pay salaries to master's and doctoral graduate students and get them back in cash later, or they take bank books and cards and withdraw them themselves. The reason why we cannot report even if we receive such unfair treatment is that the lives of masters and PhD depend on the words of the professor. And the academia is very narrow. If you don't plan on getting this floor at all, it's unthinkable to accuse the professor of corruption. He who was in the current position would know better than anyone on this matter. Read more at wuxiax.com. So, I tried to make a foundation myself. So that we can select and support people who are really meaningful and passionate. You don't want to make money and be sympathetic, but you're thinking of investing in the scientific world. I feel sorry for the chemistry students at Hankook University. Why? I lost such a good professor. At my words, Professor Haman Kim coughed in vain because he was embarrassed. Thank you for thinking like that. As I was getting to work and getting things done, I got a phone call. Hello, Professor. Professor Myung-Jun Kim said with a smile. I didn't know my student would receive the Nobel Peace Prize. I haven't received it yet. You'll get it anyway. If we had to say that it was a competitive candidate, it would be the UNHCR, but it was awarded there before. If I don't, will Ronald stay still? It is. According to an anonymous White House official, they have already set up a place for a table in the Oval Office. Why the hell does this person like the Nobel Prize so much? Not long ago, the conservative group also went to school once. What was that? Was it a pan-national action committee that prevented Kang Jin-ho from winning the Nobel Prize? I sent a lot of letters to school, but I'm working hard to send them to you. Fine. Just burn it, please. How are you doing these days? I'm just working hard. You should come to school once. Did you forget what we were supposed to teach before? There are still a lot of things I need to take care of, so I thought I should visit and see him. When shall we go? Come to play on Monday. I'll buy you coffee. Okay. Kang Jin, who was nothing less than a legend in Korea University. I wonder if she was a gold spoon from birth, and after being discharged from the military, she became the world's richest student from an ordinary student. Took her 4 years to get there. In just 4 years, she has made a name for herself as a global investor. And now she is about to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. The names of Kang Jin-ho and Kim Ho-min were hung on the front door of the school. The business department was completely festive. Some students who went to her school with Jin-ho Kang boasted about her juniors. Brexit happened while we were listening to lectures together. At that time, I made a bet in the department, but when everyone was betting on Remain, Jin-ho senpai proudly bet on his resignation. It was great to play money-raising games at the bar. Just having dinner together and attending the same lecture was enough of pride for her. I also ate with Jin-ho Sr. Those who could not see Kang Jin-ho's face were very sorry. Aren't you going back to school? Hey, are you going to college now? If I had that kind of money, I could start a university altogether. Then Professor Myung-Jun Kim told the students of the department. On Monday, Jin-ho Kang came and decided to give a lecture, so the kids who have time that day remain. The students were surprised by this. Contrary to what other investors rave about the manner of her investment performance, Jin-ho Kang has done little outside work compared to her reputation. Especially giving her lectures was unprecedented. The whole school was in turmoil at the news that Kang Jin-ho was coming, and applications were flooding in from all directions. As students from other schools showed interest, the school limited her qualifications to Korean university students. And she gave priority to business students. Although she allowed only herself to apply and banned transfers, her seat filled in an instant and tickets circulated among the students. President Chun Yun-hwa of Hankook University was engulfed in hope. Will Jihan Kang make a huge donation to her school? Wouldn't it be very beautiful and highly recommended for a successful entrepreneur to apply to his alma mater? Local politicians snooped around South Korea to get her face stamped. I met Professor Myung-Jun Kim in the department head's office after a long time. I am not busy. It's the same thing. Professor Myung-Jun Kim said with a smile. These days, the popularity of business administration is no joke because of you. Did you know that the cutoff is higher than any other medical school? Because the job is very good. It is said that many large corporations take them to them in fear of graduation. I toured the business department with Professor Myung-Jun Kim and greeted the juniors. Hello, senior. It is an honor to meet you. Seeing the fresh blue freshmen makes me feel old. There were also some familiar faces. Most of the female students graduated, but the male students, who had served in the military during that time, are still attending. Shin Yuri also graduated last semester. After she graduated, she had one phone call. I haven't been able to meet her because she's been busy with other things. I drank coffee and chatted with my classmates. When asked what was the hardest part of going to school, most of them cited money. Students with a good family environment are fine, but most of the students who do not are doing 1 or 2 part-time jobs. The reason is because of tuition fees that cost millions per semester. Compared to other countries, college tuition in Korea is very expensive. Hankook University, a national university. Even so, among private universities, there are many private universities where the annual tuition is more than 10 million won. When this issue became an issue in the past, Your Excellency said, I know because I went to college, but I can get a scholarship by studying hard. It's not wrong, but the number of scholarships you can get is limited anyway. It is a structure in which someone has no choice but to be eliminated by competing fiercely. I'm not proud of it, but I've never won a scholarship. However, the situation is a little better for students who live in Seoul. However, students from rural areas have to bear the enormous cost of living in Seoul. Some students did not even have a semi-basement, so they were living in places such as gozewons and one-room tels. Have you never built a dormitory before? Professor Myung-Joon Kim shook his head. I did, but the studio workers around me picked it up and got up. Studio owners flocked to the city hall and ward office to protest, and the ward office, conscious of the votes, delayed the permit, saying they did an environmental evaluation. In the end, the original construction plan was reduced to less than half and barely passed approval. Of course, it was not enough to handle the students who came from the provinces. It's amazing. Does it make sense to say that studios can't build dormitories just because they're against it? I moved to the auditorium with Professor Myung-Joon Kim. The inside was already full of people. I don't think there were that many gatherings at entrance ceremonies or events. I got everyone's attention and went up to the auditorium. Nice to meet you. This is Jin-Hoo Kong. Enormous applause and shouts poured in. I grabbed the mic and said, "First of all, thank you very much for taking the time to come here. Actually, I have nothing to say in this place. I can't even say that I invested because I can see foreknowledge. That's why I don't do lectures or speeches. I was thinking of announcing something like a new industry or a change in the automobile industry by telling the head of the PR team to make a PPT, but that's the story anyway. What are you going to do with everything you know?" So I changed my plans a bit. The thing you most want to hear is about money. There is no one in the world who hates money. So do I. At my words, the students burst into laughter. Everyone knows how I invested and how I made money. There's no point in talking about it again. So, I'm going to have a conversation with someone who is far superior and famous than me about money and life. It was difficult to get you here, so please give me a lot of applause. When I finished my words, an elderly foreigner came up to the stage. His hair was white, he wore thick glasses, and he wore a suit and suspenders. He looked just like an ordinary white grandfather on the outside. People were startled by the sudden situation. Come on, wait. That grandpa? Aren't you that person? Is this real? I introduced him. You are the president of Berkshire Cashier Warren Boat. The insurance company owned by Berkshire Cashier is actively developing insurance products for autonomous and driverless vehicles. Warren Boat visited Korea for a short time to cooperate with Seosung Life Insurance and Seosung Fire and Marine Insurance, which are affiliates of the Seosung Group, and for equity investment, and I invited Korea University. Fortunately, he readily accepted my offer. Professor Myung-Joon Kim and the other professors who sat in the front seat were startled, and the people all stood up at once and clapped with shouts. Clap, clap. Wow. Taking the microphone, Warren Boat spoke to me in a warm voice. Now what shall we start with? A surprise conversation between me and Warren Boat in the auditorium of Korea University made the news that evening. Foreign media such as CNN and BBC also carefully covered our conversation. Unfortunately, Warren Boat left for Vietnam right away due to an upcoming schedule. On the way back from seeing us off to the airport, we got a call and ran straight to Seosung Hospital. Ellie, who had arrived first outside the delivery room, greeted us. Come on. How is it? It's been a while since I've been in, but it's still there. Henry was also there. He looked anxious. Please, nothing should happen. Don't worry too much. After a while, Taekyu's parents also arrived. Good morning. Jin-Hoo also came. How much time has passed? The door to the delivery room opened and the nurse came out. Both mother and child are healthy. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief at those words, and Henry thanked God with a look as if he had been resurrected from the dead. Your husband, please come in first. Yes. Henry quickly went inside. Taekyu looked at me with a very bewildered expression. I am your uncle. I don't even know how to feed formula yet. Why are you worried about that? No, my sister can do it for me. After a while we were able to go inside. In her sister's arms was a baby stacked in her sack. Hyunju's older sister had a pale and tired face, but she had a proud smile. Pai son. The baby in the sack was much smaller than I thought. What is the baby's name? Hyunju's older sister answered Eli's question. Logan. Logan Goldman. It's a pretty name. Born to an American father and Korean mother, this child is of course dual citizenship. Take, you asked. Then what's your Korean name? To call you Gun. If I take Hyunju's older sister's surname, will I become Ogun? Hyunju's older sister, holding the baby in her arms, looked more beautiful and happier than ever. Henry looked at her loved ones quietly, holding her Hyunju's sister's hand. I suddenly had this thought. Perhaps it is more difficult to create a life than to earn tens of trillions of won? When it became known that Hyunju's sister gave birth safely, her congratulations poured out from all sides. Chairman Im Jin-young and President Lim Soo-mi went to the hospital, and Henry's parents and James flew to Korea in a private plane to see the baby. Hyunju's older sister stayed in the hospital for a few more days before she was discharged. Instead of going into a postpartum home, she decided to rest at her home and take care of her. She applied for maternity leave until next year, and she sent a professional manager from the head office. She had already finished all her important tasks before her birth, and there were no big problems with her decentralized work. And I accepted Henry's envelope. It was none other than a resignation letter. Why? It's parenting. Read more at wuxiax.com. It's no use holding on to you, right? Are you going to catch me? No. It must be a virtue of a manager to send the leaving staff neatly. Henry is the heir to Golden Gate. Now it is time for him to return to his original position. He will take a break and then return to Golden Gate. I reached out and Henry held my hand firmly. It's been fun so far. It was an honor to work together. I learned a lot. Come to think of it, he was the first employee of OTK company. It was such a great feeling. Taekyu, who was watching him from the side, said, I think we will never see each other again. Well, I live in the same town, so I'll see you often in the future. The good news came one after another. Professor Haman Kim and I were selected as recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize and the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Her mother looked like she couldn't believe it. Oh my gosh. My son won a Nobel Prize. What the hell is this? Are you sure it's fixed? Aren't you going to change your mind that you won't give it to me later? I hope. The White House quickly issued a statement fearing that it would be the case. So far there have been several U.S. presidents who have won the Nobel Peace Prize. But they were all Democrats, and this is the first time a Republican president has been president. That's why Republicans were so excited. President Ha Chong-min, who was on a tour of Europe, delivered his congratulations. I sincerely congratulate CEO Jin-Hu Kong and Director Ho-min Kim for winning the Nobel Prize. This is the joy of all our people. The liberal Kuomintang changed its attitude as if conscious of public opinion. When this happened, the People's Action Committee to prevent Kong Jin-Hu from winning the Nobel Prize, which was created by a conservative group, was secretly renamed President Ronald Seoul Awarding Promotion Committee for the Nobel Peace Prize. Doing the same thing. It is only President Ronald's work that successfully prepared Big One and saved so many people. Therefore, the Nobel Peace Prize must be awarded to President Ronald alone. He raised his voice, but there was an atmosphere where no one cared. I spoke to Professor Mohan. The Nobel Prize is a prize that anyone who studies academics dreams of at least once. However, I had no idea that I would receive the Peace Prize not for academic achievement. I said with a smile, isn't that an academic achievement? If he hadn't studied the Big One, he wouldn't have been able to save people. The California Institute of Technology has produced more than 30 Nobel Prize winners to date. Considering the number of students and faculty, that's an absurd ratio. For reference, the country with the highest number of Nobel Prize winners per capita is the United States. While Americans are not terribly smarter or better than the rest of the world, it is true that the United States has invested heavily compared to other countries. In a time like this when the industry is changing, more talent is needed, and to do that, Korea needs to invest that much. I had a meeting after a long time. Professor Haman Kim has made up his mind to support basic science in Korea with the money he earned from the development of OTK batteries. I can't leave you alone to do this good thing. So he decided to work together at the company level. Professor Haman Kim came to the headquarters to attend the meeting. He usually looks like a white man, but today he got a neat haircut and shaved. A real company to establish a foundation? Don't worry. The name of the foundation will be the Haman Kim Foundation. Oh no. It's okay. It is a foundation for supporting basic science, so it should be named after the Nobel laureate in chemistry. I'm a little embarrassed. Professor Haman Kim smiled brightly. Golden Gate legal team members and team leaders also attended the meeting to seek advice on legal procedures, including foundation establishment. I thought as I looked at the head of the legal affairs team one, who wore a suit and tied his hair neatly. Today Beauty is working hard. As I put my foot under the desk, Ellie raised her eyes with a slightly angry expression on her face. She's here for work, so don't gossip and do her job. I said quickly. So I'm thinking of setting up a foundation. Operating expenses are covered by deducting a portion of the OTK R&D Center's revenue. As the battery production increases, the patent fees to the research center will also increase, so there will be no shortage of operating costs. Taijayu said. Isn't this what the government should do in the first place? Looks like you don't have a budget. Taekyu shook his head at my words. Someone said it's not that the country doesn't have a budget, it's that there are too many thieves. Who said this? In fact, Korea has a very high ratio of R&D investment to GDP. However, investment in basic science was almost non-existent. The reason is that high-ranking people like to see results within a year or two. Therefore, basic science that requires long-term research is inevitably pushed out of priority. I want to build a university dormitory apart from that. What do you think? This time, after I went to Korea University, I investigated the actual conditions of dormitories in universities. The dormitory occupancy rate was only 20%. Nevertheless, the acceptance rate of universities in the metropolitan area is much lower than that of regional universities. In other words, it was more difficult for students who went from the metropolitan area to the metropolitan area to enter the dormitory than the students who went from the metropolitan area to the rural area. College students usually receive financial support from their parents. Then is it difficult to find a room for a child who has moved from the metropolitan area to a rural area? Or is it difficult to find a room for a child who has moved from the metropolitan area to the metropolitan area? Of course, the latter is overwhelmingly difficult. This is for two reasons. First, the income of households living in the metropolitan area is higher than in the provinces, and second, the rent in the metropolitan area is much higher than in the provinces. In Seoul alone, the situation is even worse. House prices in Seoul were originally expensive, but in recent years they have skyrocketed. The rent is already not at a level that college students can afford as part-time jobs. Therefore, the housing requirements for students attending universities in Seoul were very poor. Team leader Jong Ki-hong nodded his head. Yes. Even though Korea University is in a better position because tuition is cheap, there are not only a couple of kids who live in gozawons or one-room tels. One of my classmates, Hyanu, who came from Gimcheon, lived in a gozawon for 4 years. I was surprised. Did you live in that senior gozawon? I found out later. I'm not good at talking like that. It is. I also didn't talk to the kids well after the family situation got difficult. Well, Hyunwoo is now working at Myri Investment and Securities, and he and Ki-hong sometimes meet and drink. Sanjiop Sr. said. What about the land? Don't you need land to build a building? I contact a local construction company and tell them to sell if they have land near the university. They said they would give me the right to build. Then it will be okay. But wouldn't it be the opposite? Everyone nodded as if in agreement. It was an expression on the face that Ellie alone did not understand English. What do you mean? Companies are building dormitories for students. Who is against it? Nearby studio owners. Why? I rent to students, and when a dormitory is built, rents drop and vacancies increase, putting my livelihood at risk. Yes. I explained it for Ellie, who is not familiar with the Korean situation. Students' requests to increase the dormitory have continued, and universities have started building dormitories, but many of them have been cancelled because studio owners oppose them on the grounds of their right to live. Ellie still had a look on her face that she didn't understand. But if the university is building on the site owned by the university, there is no problem, right? The local government does not give permission. It's like an environmental impact assessment or a traffic impact assessment, and it procrastinates. Local residents have the right to vote to elect the mayor, city council, ward councillor, and local legislator. On the other hand, most of the students have addresses in other areas, and they are not very active in voting. In this way, local politicians take the side of the residents who can get more votes unconditionally, regardless of whether they are right or wrong. Politicians tend to prioritize the interests of the few who can exercise their votes over the interests of the majority. This is the reason why the dormitory problem has not been properly resolved so far. When you think about it, that's amazing. If the university isn't a charitable place, what money would you spend on building a dormitory? Of course, it is the tuition collected from students. In other words, college students cannot even build their own living space with the money they pay, because the rental income of studio owners cannot decrease. Eli said angrily. This is nonsense. How is this different from saying you shouldn't release hostages to make a living? I nodded. We got the information, and Daewoo Construction said that they would sell the site at the back gate of Hankook University. What? Damn it. Isn't there a bigger and more beautiful site? In order to get a proper snow painting, you have to get a better site than other construction companies. The construction company presidents personally visited OTK company with their documents. They proudly showed off the land they brought. When Kang Jin-woo offered to purchase the site at a price higher than her market price, she all waved. What are you talking about? I will give it to you at a lower price than market price. You say you are doing a good job, but we Unsung Construction should also add strength. If you sell it at a lower price than the purchase price, it's a breach of contract, so I'm only sorry that I can't give you a lower price. We will also do the construction at the lowest price. Just leave it to me. Young Ki-hong, head of the PR team, said that he plans to build dormitories in 42 locations across the country and rent them out to students at low rent. When the dormitory candidates were announced, the students welcomed them with open arms. Really? OTK company will build a dormitory? Oh yeah. Including our school. Yes. I made money from oil speculation this time, but I have to do something good. But if you build it now, when will it be completed? Are you going to build it all while I'm at school? I'm going to the army in a little while, but I hope it will be built when I return to school after being discharged from the military. I want to escape from the semi-underground because it is built quickly. It's nice to have a ring. I'm Wanjahatiti. The three of us live together to save money. That's good enough. My brother has been living in a windowless Gazawan for 8 months. I also overcame my claustrophobia due to lack of money. However, the support for it was soon overshadowed by the opposition. Afraid to issue a press release, studio owners stood up. Not only that, but even residents who were not related to the rental business expressed opposition. If big college students hang out at night drinking, what will the neighborhood be like? How scary are college students these days? Yes. Don't listen to adults. There is also an elementary school in front of this place. But if college students smoke cigarettes or engage in romantic acts, it's not good for the children's health, and it looks a little different. There is no playground in my neighborhood. Please build a playground. In order to build it, you need to build facilities that are helpful to the residents, such as a park or a dojo building. Anyway, no dormitory. It's not like this. Let's join forces with the residents and file a complaint with the ward office and city hall. Seoul is a megacity with a population of over 10 million. And the mayor of Seoul is the head of the city in charge of administration. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the second highest position after the president in terms of his authority and political influence. Is there even such a thing as a communication command? The mayor of Seoul may be reappointed up to 3 times. Mayor Won Sang-hoon, who succeeded in getting a 3rd term this time, was the last of his tenure. The mayor of Seoul is no less than a shortcut to the presidential election. And he has been selected as a powerful next-generation presidential candidate for the New Politics Party. His correction was not bad either. He didn't have any great achievements, but he wasn't at fault either. The approval rating of the ruling party is steadfast, and the opposition party is disjointed. If this atmosphere continues until the next presidential election, wouldn't it be enough to see even the presidency? Mayor Won Sang-hoon spent the rest of his tenure not causing problems and focused only on management. But suddenly the OTK company decided to build a dormitory, which caused a huge uproar. Compared to the domestic chaebols, Kang Jin, who has a small business base in Korea and has no political circles and personal connections. But he has a greater influence than anyone else. He is the richest man in the world and the hero who saved America from crisis. It is no exaggeration to say that the Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded and the future of the automobile industry is in his hands. Besides, he is also close with the President of the United States. Can any businessman or politician in Korea have a standalone meeting with the US President? If he had said that he would build a dormitory in 1 or 2 places, He would not have reacted very differently even if some residents objected. Read more at wuxiax.com. However, only 19 candidates were announced in Seoul. This means that all of Seoul is included. The city hall was flooded with complaints that paralyzed business. Local residents all opposed it and studio workers flocked to the city hall to protest. Does it make sense for OTK company to enter the rental business? How do ordinary people like us who rent one room and earn a living every day live? Isn't this just telling us to just die? Stop violating the property rights of the common people. The city of Seoul should take measures. Mayor Won Sang-hoon had no intention of bumping into Kang Jin-hoo. However, it was difficult to stand still in a situation where the opposition was in the air. Some mayors came along with councillors. No, even if you build a dormitory, you have to do it slowly, one or two places while watching public opinion. What is this? There are 3 locations in our ward alone. No matter how many universities there are in our district, isn't this too much? Local opinion is very bad. All the locals are against entering the dormitory. The ward office is now paralyzed due to protests from residents. How about the next election? Shouldn't the mayor also think about the next election? If you stand still like this, you never know how many votes will be blown away. At least I had to pretend to react. Mayor Won Sang-hoon announced his official position after meeting with the representatives of one-room companies. The city of Seoul will ask the OTK company for cooperation so that it can proceed by collecting the opinions of residents on the construction of the dormitory. In front of the headquarters, studio workers also gathered and protested. They even put up a banner in red that read, "Chaebol Kang Jin-hoo, stop killing ordinary people." They seem to emphasize that I am a chaebol and that they are ordinary people. In XCOP, which is in charge of building management and security, the main gate was closed and more manpower was deployed in case of a possible collision. Staff entered through the back door. When I saw the announcement of the Seoul Metropolitan Government through the news, I snorted. You like to collect the opinions of the people. How is this different from saying don't do it? It's the same thing. What would you do if you had to gather everyone's opposing opinions? I expected that the studio owners would object, but even the city of Seoul will fight it. I came forward and announced my position. I am not asking for an increase in floor area ratio, nor is it asking for local government reporting support. What's wrong with saying I'm going to build on my own land with my own money? I will just proceed. Upon hearing Kang Jin-hoo's announcement, Mayor Won Sang-hoon was perplexed. I hope it will come out like this. Mayor Won Sang-hoon has long emphasized communication with residents and has built up an image of a mayor who always communicates and listens. The original plan was to negotiate and persuade Kang Jin-hoo to compromise at an appropriate level. However, Kang Jin-hoo refused to cooperate with the city of Seoul and said that he would continue to build the dormitory. It was as if he had completely ignored his words. No, don't you have to pretend to listen to what the mayor of Seoul says? What kind of entrepreneur could do this to the mayor of Seoul? Im Jin-young won't be able to do this either. However, if you think about it, Kang Jin-hoo was like this to the president as well. There must be no law telling the mayor of Seoul not to do this. He said he would collect the opinions of the residents, so it's hard to back down. If you change your mind now, you will face harsh criticism from the ruling party and backlash from landlords and local residents. Studio owners and residents have already flocked to the city hall to protest Kang Jin-hoo's remarks, and calls are constantly coming in to the ward office and community centers as well. Some studio owners have shown extreme anger. Then we can no longer work. I will just send all the students out and close the studio as a group. If you die, you die. You can't afford to build a dormitory. I'd rather set the building on fire and burn myself to death. These are all voters with one precious vote. If you show yourself being pushed by Kang Jin-hoo as it is, there will be a setback in the Great Power Road. Rather, if he shows a strong leader who can even face the chaebol on this occasion, he will be able to rally his supporters. Mayor Won Sang-hoon said in a strong tone. Housing and land are public goods, not privately owned. The city will not issue a building permit until we come up with a reasonable solution after collecting the opinions of local residents. Opposition was further ignited, and Won Sang-hoon's supporters were outraged. Otaku versus Mayor of Seoul? Mayor Won Sang-hoon is the next presidential candidate of the New Politics Party. I had a fight with the president and arrested him. Are you afraid of the mayor? Until then I also cheered for Gang Jin-ho, but this is not the case. This bastard made money and became a conservative. What's wrong with collecting opinions from local residents? Ignoring the mayor's words and building it as you please. What kind of development dictatorship is it now? You shouldn't do it your way because you're a rich chaebol. The sovereignty of Korea rests with the people, not the chaebol. Korea is a democratic republic, not a chaebol republic. That's right. Protect the property rights of ordinary people. Mayor Won Sang-hoon stopped the construction. Apologize immediately after Kang Jin-ho. Yeah. Next studio. The left-handers are hot. Only the opinions of residents are collected, not the opinions of students? To be honest, I'm now looking back on Won Sang-hoon's presidency. Anyway, the leftists are civil. Whoever wins, John Jam Jim Jim. Crazy ha. Crazy all dolls. Both the left and the right. Members of the Liberal National Party, who had always been at odds with Mayor Won Sang-hoon, also contributed this time. In particular, lawmakers with constituencies in Seoul ran wild. Representative Ma Sang-tae of the Liberal National Party personally visited the constituency and spoke at a meeting with residents. It's a dormitory on that site. That's absurd. There you need to enter Oriental medicine hospitals to create jobs and improve the health of residents. We will drive out the dormitory and discuss with the Seoul Metropolitan Government to build an Oriental medicine hospital there. Local residents cheered, but netizens responded that it was absurd. No, we're talking about the dormitory, so why is the Oriental Medicine Hospital popping up here? The person who chose that person, get down. Don't do that too much. It is said that he was only able to visit Oriental medicine hospitals after being hit by a gangster while fighting a hunger strike in front of the National Assembly a while ago. You should be able to get a single bed. Assemblyman Ma Sang-tae is in a coma again. Please calm down. Coma. Leave me alone. You want to build a hospital where you will be admitted. Take you, who was reading articles and comments, said. Your cursing is overflowing today. It is said that if you curse a lot, you will live a long life. Isn't that what makes you immortal? Even if I swear I eat, and even if I do not eat, I am full. In any case, building permits are the authority of the municipality. No matter how much you plan to build according to the law, there is no answer unless you give permission. What are you going to do now? Well, actually, the dormitory is not a problem. Nothing will happen if I don't build this, and I have nothing to lose. However, this incident showed the problems that Korea had. It is the collective egoism of the established powers. Unless otherwise specified, prices are determined by supply and demand. When a new competitor arises, prices are inevitably reduced or sales are inevitably reduced. No one welcomes a situation in which they lose, especially if it's related to livelihood. So it is not uncommon for studio owners to object. The real bad thing is the politicians who ride on this local selfishness. There are even city councillors and district councillors elected on a promise to block the construction of dormitories in the local area. At this point, it seems like the country is going crazy. The easiest way not to get insulted in Korea is to do nothing. Because if you do nothing, there will be no problems. If I hadn't set up an angle with the government, I wouldn't have been insulted by the conservatives. And if I hadn't said that I would build an electric car factory in Korea, I wouldn't have been insulted by the Unsung Motor Union and the two major trade unions. If that was the case, wouldn't everyone, whether liberal or conservative, like and support me? It is the same this time. He went out to build a dormitory for nothing, but he is being scorned by local residents and ruling party supporters. If the existing union opposes it, we cannot create jobs with an annual salary of 40 million won taxi. Drivers oppose it, so we can't share rides and carpooling, and we cannot even build dormitories for students to live in because the studio workers oppose them. While Korea is preoccupied with maintaining the status quo, other countries are changing at a tremendous pace. Even when it comes to ride-sharing, which taxi drivers are opposed to, developed countries are already moving to driverless cars. So, should we stop developing driverless cars to make a living for taxi drivers? This may seem like a very distant future, but it is happening right now. Autonomous driving has already been commercialized, and logistics trucks that only run on fixed roads are about to operate unmanned vehicles. However, in Korea there are still ride-sharing and carpooling, so they are fighting over money. Even if you get insulted and lose your vote, it's the right thing to do, and you should do it if it's necessary. However, the politicians, whether the ruling party or the opposition party, are conscious of public opinion and are only paying attention. Someone has to break this situation. And the only person who can do that is me. Because I'm not tied to the existing social system and I'm used to being insulted. If you can't even build dormitories for students because the residents object, what can you do in this country? Kang Jin-ho said that if the Seoul metropolitan government does not give permission, he will not hesitate to bring an administrative lawsuit. Now, the dormitory problem seemed to be heading towards an all-out war between the mayor of Seoul and Kang Jin-ho. OTK company sent an official letter to the student council of the university in Seoul. As soon as the permission of the Seoul metropolitan government is granted, construction will begin immediately, complete and supply within 1 year, along with a bird's-eye view and cost of the dormitory to be built. The cost is about 15,000 won per month for a 4-person room. During the vacation period you can leave the room freely. When this happened, this time college students stood up. In the meantime, college students have consistently raised their voices about the dormitory problem, but no one listened. But this time it was a little different. The student council announced that they would fight in solidarity with each other. University students flocked to the city hall to protest. Allow building dormitories. The OTK company is going to build it, so why doesn't the city of Seoul allow it? Students are not meant to pay rent to studio owners. Seoul Mayor Won Sang-hoon and related politicians who oppose the building of the dormitory will hold a campaign to lose in the next election. Mayor Won Sang-hoon was bewildered when the college students took action. What he is aiming for is the presidential election, not the local elections. No matter how many resident votes compared to college students, it is a number that cannot be ignored when 42 college students gather. Shouldn't we be thinking about the votes of college students as well as their families? Why the hell did this kid raise his job like this? Mayor Won Sang-hoon gently changed his words. I think there was a misunderstanding in what I said. It's not that I'm not going to stop building the dormitory, it's that the city will provide support so that we can fully gather opinions and engage in dialogue and communication. Then the studio workers raised their voices again. Some merchants welcomed it in anticipation of the revitalization of the commercial area, but it was quickly buried by opposition voices. Studio owners oppose it for fear of a drop in rent and vacancy, but local residents oppose it for all sorts of reasons. The atmosphere in the neighborhood deteriorates, the children's education is problematic, the right to sunlight is violated, house prices fall, the educational environment deteriorates, ask for something else to be built, just don't like it, etc. Various opinions were raised in the local community. If you continue to oppose, will you do anything for me? Of course. How much money does Jin-ho Kang have? If you want to build a dormitory, you have to build convenience facilities for residents. Yes. If you want to create a hate facility, you should also make a cultural center or sports center that residents can use. Read more at wuxiax.com. I wish I could make a Korean medicine hospital in the neighborhood, just as Representative Ma Sang-tae said. I have a lot of money, but I can give you that much. This is how to breastfeed a crying baby. There is a great deal to be gained by having strong opposition. Other regions say they are against it, so let's do our best and oppose it to the end. As the problems surrounding the dormitory grew bigger and bigger, Mayor Won Sang-hoon reiterated his position. I think we need to solve this problem through dialogue and communication with each other. I propose an open discussion to CEO Jin-ho Kang. Wouldn't it be nice to get together and listen to the opinions of the residents and also the opinions of college students? You asked. We're going to have a public discussion over there. What are we going to do? I guess the reason I pulled out this card out of the blue is because I don't think I'm going to be in the debate, right? Opposition to the establishment of dormitories is the same in all regions. Among them, Seoul has the most candidate sites and the opposition is the most severe. If the Seoul metropolitan government allows it, other regions will have no choice but to allow it. There's nothing you can't do. I directed the PR team leader. Promise that you will respond to the public debate. Organize all the opposing arguments and send it to me. Jin-ho Kang is the world's richest investor. Therefore, his behavior has always been an issue in foreign countries. He also reported the event in a big way in the media such as CNN, BBC, and NHK. The protests and interviews of residents who wanted to drive out the dormitory were published as they are. What's going on with that? Are you against building dormitories for college students? I don't understand. If it's for students, shouldn't the government step in and support it? The renters are protesting that the rent is going down, so the Seoul metropolitan government won't give you a permit. Whoa. Nonsense. Are you kidding me? Are you ignoring Korea now? It's possible in Korea. Wow. Amazing Korea. What are you doing in that country? If I were Kang Jin-woo, I'd just say I wouldn't do it. I wish I could emigrate to Germany after the earthquake. If I told you to build a dormitory in Berlin, everyone would welcome it. Pack your money and come to Australia. Interest in public debate grew. People who saw how Kang Jin-woo acted toward politicians the other day at the hearing showed great expectations, and the public debate ratings showed signs of a hit.